Started. Thank you for coming, everybody. I'd like to call the Lake Ripley Management District Board of Directors meeting to order. It's April 19th, 2025. It's 9 o'clock. Call to order and roll call. All members are present. Is there any public comment today? Any public comment today? Okay. Seeing none, we will move on to approve of the minutes of the March 15th board meeting. Everybody get a copy of the minutes? Take a moment to review, please.
Yeah, I'll make a motion to approve the meeting minutes from March 15th.
Okay, Laura's made a motion to approve the minutes. Is there a second?
I second it.
Meg seconded. Any other discussion on the minutes? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Nays? Okay, motion passes. Thank you. All right, going to the treasurer's report. Debbie Coots.
This was for the 1 month period ending 3/31/25. Receipts was $22.50, which was the Clean Boats, Clean Water 2024 final payment from that grant. Disbursements were $18,051.64. $50 petty cash. Checking account was $236,131.22. And we have 2 CDs. And you can see those listed. Any questions on the expenditures? I will say about the Stantec, part of it is grant money and part of it was what we budgeted, the $10,000 that we budgeted for that project. The only thing on the visa bill that was unusual was $1,170 for the water testing, but we got reimbursement from Enbridge for that, so.
And that was full reimbursement, too.
Yes, full reimbursement. So I don't know if there's anything. And then you also have a copy of the expense report for the first quarter. I mean, there's a few things on there. Leanna and I felt that what I do is I put her amounts in for her payroll, and then as we go for adding for Andrew and Dwight, then I add that in, but at least then she can see what the running total is, so she knows how much money she has left to spend for.
Yeah, that's nice. That's nice to be able to track it that way.
Because like the health insurance isn't going to change and the pension isn't going to change. So those I just, put out. But
what's up with the legal fees? It's either $18.25 in February and March.
yep,
Is there?
I just pay the bill.
Yeah, there was several things that we had to reach out to legal counsel about over the last month or two.
Okay.
Some of it being land acquisition, some of it being, I don't know, what else do we have? It was mostly land, wasn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Mostly land acquisition stuff, which we are asking for some reimbursement on that.
I mean, he attended the meeting, was it last month or the month before? And that was like, I think that was over like $300 and some or whatever for him to attend this meeting. So.
Yeah, a couple different land acquisition projects.
Yeah, and some land acquisition projects that we're working on.
So I don't know if you have any other questions about, no, the legal, we talked about, I think last month, that the legal fees are going to be over. There's no way we budgeted enough money for that.
And we knew that going in, that we'd go over there.
Well, you have to make the budget. It has to be approved at this meeting in July to be presented at the annual meeting in August. So how can you predict what's going to happen in July of this year for next year?
Right, and when a piece of property comes available that we may or may not be interested in, there's some legal expenses typically to venture into those areas, so.
So before I say anything else, I guess I'd like approval of this,
Sure.
and then I'll talk about.
Okay, so
This
is
part.
there a motion to approve Debbie's report as read?
I so move.
Steve, so moved. Is there a second? George is second. Okay. Any other discussion on Debbie's report?
So I wanted to
Oh,
bring,
you
yeah,
wanna go
well, go ahead, I guess, if,
All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, thank you.
the, the one CD is coming due or May 7th, and so we will not have another board meeting before that comes due. I put together some numbers. The interest on that CD for 2024 was $669.58. And the interest that we paid on the loan was $1,742.56. So because of where interest rates are going, and even what's shown on here, like we talked about last month, you have to, I only could do 8 months to get a better rate. The rate on here for the renewal that I have right here was like 2.25 or 2.5, we'll say, and we're paying like 2.3 on the loan. We have to have an agenda item, but I think at this point that we should think about paying off the loan with part of the funds. And it would be a motion to use restricted funds to pay off the loan. It just doesn't make much sense at this point to keep it, the money there. And especially, and I guess because, as you read in the report, we may be getting some inheritance money or, estate money. So I came into this with not having a loan, becoming treasurer, and I'd like to leave not having a loan. And whoever takes my place, that would just make it easier for them not to have to worry about making a loan payment.
Right. And the loan was taken out for a purpose, and that
And
purpose is.
We've,
seems
a
like
couple
it's
of
not-
times we've thought we were going to use it, and we haven't used it. And so I would use 50,000 from the CD, and then we budgeted 10,359.76 was what we budgeted would it be for 8 payments. So that would cover what we owe, because we owe $60,373.12. But this would be next month's decision, but I just wanted you to give the information to think about it before we come to the next meeting, so at least you can have some time to really think about what would be the best way for us to proceed.
Yep, thanks for the input. Okay, any other questions from Debbie? Okay, all right, thanks Debbie for all that. We'll move on to Town of Oakland Representative Laura Payne, and congratulations on your election.
Thank you.
Laura is our elected chair.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you. I appreciate that. So I have a few updates. One was the Enbridge update. We did have another forum on March 24th. Some of you were there. Enbridge presented their work plan moving forward. That was approved by the DNR. And afterwards, members of the public asked a lot of good questions, and Enbridge and the DNR were able to answer some of those. There were still a few outstanding. But I think it was a really good forum, and if anybody who wasn't able to attend would like to review the forum, you can on YouTube. So if you need help getting that location, let me know and I'll help you with that. So since our last meeting, excuse me, Enbridge's environmental consultant collected water samples from private drinking water wells and 1 high-capacity wells within half a mile of their site. All of those came back clean. There were no detections of VOCs, so that was a great thing. They also collected surface water samples, but Leanna can get into the details of that later since she was involved with that. Last week, Enbridge started their free product recovery at the site. They continue to have larger PVC pipes near the spill, and so they're removing the oil that's just free once a week, and they'll do so for some time until we'll see what happens there. I don't have any details yet. The DNR hasn't received a report about the first week and how much was recovered, but I'll keep tabs on that once we know more. They should have a report next week. This week, they started excavation. Again, I don't really have any details, but excavation of more contaminated soils in the vicinity of the spill. They removed some concrete the week before to prepare themselves for that. And there should be a report in the next week or so submitted to the DNR, so we'll get a better feel for how much they needed to excavate and what, what that means. They also are going to be starting their soil vapor extraction pilot test. They did submit that report and it was approved. So that's a remedial method that will move air through the soil and help vaporize and break down the crude oil. So that'll be started soon. They are also in the processing of coordinating with drillers to get the permanent monitoring well installation completed, and those then will be used to take quarterly groundwater samples, and then they'll see if the contamination is migrating or not, and then if it is, they most likely will have to expand their monitoring well network, but that's not definitively going to happen. But I just want everyone to be aware that if something does change out there, they will pivot and a new plan will be addressed. So that's where it stands right now. Not too much as far as what the site is looking like at this time. Haven't been any changes. Does anyone have any questions about that?
No.
Okay.
We've been pretty much updated the same time you guys have, so we're all in the loop on this. So.
Yeah. So I'll keep you posted on that one. We had talked about the Woodcrest property. They had wanted to build a subdivision on a 3.6 acre property on Highway 12 where the old Lutheran church was. They had proposed 8 homes and they would need a variance. So we had talked in this group before that there were some concerns about stormwater and negative impacts to the lake. The planning committee and the town board voted to deny the variance that was needed in order to get these homes in. There just wasn't enough space in the property to meet the 200-foot setbacks for their proposed plan of 8 homes. The developer asked us to table the subdivision and just go through the variance process, and it did. It went to the county's Board of Adjustments recently, and it was denied. So that is good news as far as the lake goes, that they will not be allowed to build 8 homes, potentially 2 homes, I think, right, Leanna? It would be about 2 or 3 homes at most. The Board of Adjustment really looks at, is there some type of, I'm blanking on that.
Hardship? Burden?
Hardship, sorry, too early in the morning for me. There's a hardship that it's zoned R1. Without a variance, could they not, use the property as intended? But the Board of Variance did feel that they could still build. There were other people who were told that wanted to purchase the property, including the Lake District, that they were not, that they would have to meet that setback. And there were other neighbors that had tried to get a variance and didn't. So it was felt that, for the most part, that it didn't seem fair and it was inconsistent since others were denied. So that is a good thing. The developer still can build a couple houses. I'll let you know if they come back to the planning committee. I'm sure they'll have to regroup and figure out what they want to do, but I'll keep you posted on that. And then we'll get more into the Didion subdivision in a little bit, but just so you're aware, the town board did approve their preliminary plat at our last meeting on the 15th. There are some contingencies with it. Strand Engineering is reviewing the plan to ensure that there's no stormwater issues, no impacts to the wetland. They're in the process of that right now. I talked to them. It's looking very good. There's just a few minor things to work out. Of course, here today, the donation to the Lake District, a town developers agreement, and a stormwater maintenance agreement. And that maintenance agreement also will help ensure that over time that there are no negative stormwater impacts, that their system is maintained and properly functioning. And then we'll hear more from Deanna Schneider about that. And that is all I have.
Okay, thank you. Any
Thank you,
questions
Laura.
for Laura? Okay, thank you, Laura. Seeing none, we'll move on. Move on to the Jefferson County Representative update. Meg?
Yeah, just a couple of things. One, while I'm thinking about it, it doesn't 100% directly involve, but Laura was on the same call, or you were there in person for the Highway Committee meeting, Highway Commission meeting, and they are talking about doing some modifications at Hope Lake Road, but they're not talking about actually redoing the intersection there. So that's less of an impact when you talk about, you know, what could be sediment and water movement and all that kind of stuff. They are talking about grooving the pavement, and they're going to look at some signage and things like that. But there is the potential, and that wouldn't happen until the signage might go up next week, but the actual work on the roadway is probably in the next fiscal year budget. And then down the road, they're looking at, I think it was the 26, 27, they want to redo the whole section of Highway 18, and they are talking about putting a roundabout in at A. So if that happens, that's a chunk of land that's reconfigured. But that isn't guaranteed because of the funding.
And that wouldn't be done until like 2030.
Yeah, that's a 2030 thing. So, but it's down the road, and it's something to have in mind, you know, when anybody's looking at land and configurations and stuff. The other thing, April 7th, there was a groundwater event. Did you go to that?
I didn't.
Okay, so you know, Kevin McSarek from Stevens Point, I was online instead of in person, but gave his presentation, talked about the groundwater dashboard that they've created. It's available through the county. I think the presentation's online. I'm not 100% positive. I didn't go and look to see if it's up. But one of the things that they are doing is allowing for, you can go to the county health department and you can request a screening. It is not like an official analysis, but they can screen for nitrate. And they also do have kits they can hand to people so that you can submit your water for sampling. The groundwater in this area, there were, when they did their samples, there were a lot of hits for nitrates in people's wells in this area where you might want to be considering doing some work on filter systems, et cetera. So that happened, so those are available. I was at I did go and talk with our current legislators for this area and talked with them about a couple of initiatives that I've kind of mentioned that were in the governor's budget. They're talking about doing a lot more with farmland preservation, which has been a law on the books since 2007, but was defunded in 2011. And so that was set up to help establish not just practices, but to get conservation easements on land and things like that for holding things in agricultural practice as opposed to development. So that farmland preservation is in the governor's budget. Whether or not it'll stay, I don't know. There's also funding in the governor's budget for the county conservation. And I'm going to be going next week to on a hike with the governor, so that'll be an opportunity to kind of talk about some of these other kinds of issues as well. So I'm going to be representing the Land and Water Board for that.
Nice.
So
Very cool.
Yeah.
yeah, and I'll be on the, I've also just been appointed to the Legislative and Administrative Committee for Land and Water, which means I get to read all the fun policy stuff. So that's about all I've got.
Well, that's plenty.
Yeah, yeah, I'm kinda like, what happened to that retirement thing? I don't know. It's just not working out. And I don't know, Laura, if you're going to be going, there is next Friday is the legislative breakfast where all the units of government in the county are invited to kind of come to the county to sort of look at where things stand and kind of give an overview of some of the budgetary things that might have an impact on people, et cetera, and kind of do that sharing that needs to happen between different jurisdictions.
Would any of the Enbridge things come up in
I
these
don't
type meetings?
know whether the Enbridge stuff would come up at that meeting or not. I haven't seen, the agenda is pretty generic right now. I think the administrator, Michael Lucky, is going to be talking a little bit about financial priorities. I know that's kind of where he's thinking in terms of with the budget. But I don't know about some of those other kinds of stuff.
Yeah, I plan on being at that breakfast as well.
7 a.m., which
Yeah,
is
it's really early.
I have a hard time at 9
yeah.
a.m.
I know, but I plan on being there. The Joan Fitzgerald and our state assembly person, as well
Melissa
as
Ratcliffe.
and Senator Radcliffe, will probably be there, I assume. They also had a budget, a public informational in the village a few weeks ago. I went to that, so that was really interesting. They were talking about some of the things that you were talking about, and I have too reached out with them about Enbridge. We went to the Enbridge plant. I went with them in the DNR recently, so that was a good opportunity, and they really understand more about what's happening there. And I did go to that groundwater meeting, so that was really informative. I think people got a lot out of that, good questions. I don't believe, though, that it is recorded.
Okay. The previous one was.
Right.
So that's why, but I think
This-
the county ended up switching from Zoom to Teams. And I don't know if Teams allows the recording to be as conveniently done.
Yeah, I remember
yeah.
hearing that.
Yeah, which is annoying because I hate Teams with passion.
No. Well, there seemed to be some technical difficulty, so I don't believe that the recording is available, but Patricia Cicero said that the slides, which were very
Yeah.
good, they would be available on the website.
And the dashboard, the dashboard is like really, you can just drill down to all kinds of different things in there. There's a lot of different information. I was going to mention that one of the things that was clear that I felt was, at least a contribution was that Joan and Melissa both felt a little bit less comfortable answering a farmer's question in the room about the Farmland Preservation Program. And so I was able to send them a whole lot of information about what the county does, because Jefferson County's farmland does operate a farmland preservation program and has been funding it largely through the sale of county farmland, which, is kind of a finite thing and it's disappearing fast. So being able to get some of that funding would be really helpful. But, we're like one of, I think, 3 whole counties in the state that actually do work with the purchase of agricultural conservation easements. So,
Well, thank you for meeting with them about that. Important.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. Any other comments for Mike, questions for Mike? Okay, thank you. Great job. All right, Lake Manager's report, Leanna Spencer. It's been another crazy month.
Yes, busy month. I'll jump right into it. Cost share program, so Willerup's cost share is set to be fixed this upcoming week. We're hoping Thursday, depending on the weather, but they will keep me and the DNR up to date on that. Once that project is completed to DNR standards, they will file for reimbursement from us, and that project will be closed hopefully this year. Sleepy Hollow cost share, he is working on the permit this week. I did reach out to him a couple weeks ago saying, hey, what's going on? He had some medical issues that he was taking care of, and now he's better and is working on those DNR permits. And if he doesn't get it done within the next month, he's going to have to file for an extension. May 18th is when that cost share technically comes up to date, so I will remind him of that in the next week or so that he can have those funds earmarked for when his project is finished. Our native plant sale has ended. Thanks to everybody who ordered some plants. We sold 1,516 plants this year. A little less than yet last year, but still, nonetheless, pretty great to know that over 1,500 plants are getting installed in our watershed. So, great work out there. We received a $10,000 reimbursement grant from the Cambridge Community Foundation. A huge thanks to them. They're supporting our inlet stream restoration project. So that is a huge help for us in our budget. I did work out a budget that I talked about a little later in here, but I'll touch on it now for the Stantec project. With all the monies that we received from our 2 DNR surface water grants, the Cambridge Community Foundation, and us budgeting $10,000, I think we have covered our $29,300 bill for this year. So that's great news. With a little wiggle room, I think I have about $3,000 left. So that's super awesome. We have some room to do, different water quality samples or different models or whatever that $3,000 flexibility allows us to. And I also plan on asking for more grant money, so hopefully we can even, get more money in that pot for the following years, because it is a 5-phase project. Jimmy and I, sorry to circle back, we're meeting with the Cambridge Community Foundation just to explain to them what the inlet stream restoration project is and to hopefully secure their funding and their support for the next 5 years. So that'll be a great meeting, and we've invited a Stantec rep to come with us and for more of the detail side of it. So going back to those 2 DNR surface water grants, I just listed what they are and their names of them because I'll refer to them as direct watershed connection or Lake Ripley habitat assessment. And I've listed all the things I need to accomplish this year, and it's quite a list. So I began reaching out to everybody to plan those surveys. We're doing a point intercept survey, which is a plant survey of the lake this year, a nearshore non-game fish survey, a shoreland and shallows habitat survey, a bank survey, a plet survey, a public input meeting, newspaper article, ripples. So we have a lot to do, but really it's everything that we kind of do anyways, so we might as well get money to offset those costs. So excited to begin those. I created some budgets to help track where I am for those, just so I keep on track this year, trying to be better about the budgeting. And I've mentioned this again, but a cool thing is at the Lakes and Rivers Conference, I nailed down Paul Skowinski, who's a statewide aquatic plant expert. And we have a couple species of Cara, which is a cool, super old moss, related to moss plant in our lake. And he's one of the few in the state that can identify which species is which. So I'm pretty pumped for that. And you guys should be excited too. It'll be pretty cool.
Ooh, moss.
Ooh, yay!
Are these mosses native?
Yeah, they are. They're pretty stinky. They're on the west side of the lake, so if you're over on Sleepy Hollow and you pull up a bunch of plants from the ground and it smells kind of skunky and nasty, that's typically Cara. Pretty rough, and it has some marl on it, that white calcium deposit that can grow on plants. We have that in Lake Ripley. It's pretty unique. Well, not super unique, but it's unique to Lake Ripley anyways. I'm saying that wrong. It's not unique to Lake Ripley. Marl is in a lot of lakes. It's just cool that it's in our lake and not a lot of lakes around here. So yeah, it'll be neat. Anyways, sorry, geeked out a little. Inlet restoration project. We've done a lot of work with Stantec over the last month. They're working on the PLET model, which is a computer model to see where we can find some non-point source pollution. I did get permission from 2 landowners to access their property to collect some different water quality samples from different areas along the inlet creek that we've never tested before. So that'll give us some important information about where to go next. And what's great is we have the majority landowner permission and support. Just need a couple more to make this project really successful, I think. And we're working on that. I think we can get to them eventually. Enbridge update. Laura gave a pretty thorough update. Laura and I work really well together, and we talk about it every day, for sure, every week. I did go out and collect the quarterly water quality samples with Enbridge. I collect separate samples from them just to confirm that what they're testing and what their results are accurate.
Go to a separate lab.
Yep,
have our
State
own
Lab of
lab. They
Hygiene.
have their
So
lab.
we test for volatile organic compounds, and our tests all came back non-detect. So that is great. We are still pressing Enbridge to, be honest and transparent and continue their remediation plan as approved by the DNR. And if there's any other precautions that we can take as a town or a lake district, we always encourage them to do that. We rely on our regulatory agencies to make sure that they're doing the right thing at the right time. Like Laura said, I did touch base with Caroline Rice this week, and kind of similar things. They are collecting that free product from the risers that they installed near Pump 4. They are removing some concrete and digging out that area to see if there's any residual oils there, and they are starting that soil vapor extraction pilot study next week, and if all goes well, then they will continue on that plan, which is a little more elaborate than just one site as far as my understanding. So still keeping on track of that and calling them every week and asking for updates, so that's still a high priority for the district. We're looking at redesigning the cart barrier. Jimmy's helping me with that since we installed a new culvert at Park Road this summer. Our cart barrier may not quite fit, and we know it's been successful in the past because we get a lot of carp there. So we're going to try to design something that'll work and a little easier now that we've done it for 4 years, and we knew that it was pretty difficult to go in there and send somebody in the stream and pull up all that debris. It can get kind of treacherous. So hopefully something a little more effective this time. I attended the Lakes and Rivers Conference. As y'all know, it went great, as always. So much good networking. I learned a lot. I did an executive director workshop, which was really helpful for me. To be able to talk to folks that are in a similar position as mine and a similar career is important, and you learn a lot from each other. So that was great. And I did do my presentation on our nearshore non-game fish species in Lake Ripley. Standing room only. I was a little nervous at first, but I nailed it, and we got a lot of cool questions, and people were really interested in nearshore non-game fish surveys, which the DNR don't really promote because everybody's so interested in walleye and pike, and those guys need something to eat, and if we don't protect the nearshore non-game fish species of our lake, you won't have game fish. So that was pretty cool. I was excited to geek out and tell people about that kind of stuff.
Great job on that. by the way.
Yeah, thanks. That was
Moss
exciting.
and minnows,
Yay! We're doing another purple loosestrife biocontrol project. This time I got the students involved. Why should I do all the work? Let's get those Koshkonong Trail students involved and teach them a little bit about invasive plants and growing invasive plants in a biocontrol project. I won't go all into it, but if you're interested about biocontrol, let me know and I can tell you about it. We're planning the pontoon classroom. I have secured a lot of speakers and a couple of captains. We're counting on Jimmy, hopefully, to pull through and be our last captain. That's a cool event where we take the Koshkonong Trail students out on a pontoon boat, and we have 3 speakers on each that tell them about lake ecology. So I'll have one guy talking about water quality and paleolimnology, which is the soil in our lake and what that tells us. Somebody else talking about aquatic plants and why they're important, and then a third kind of talking about, probably me, what the Lake District is, what we do here, and why it's important to have a Lake District and protect not only our lake, but the land around our lake and the land in our watershed. So that'll be exciting. Tall grass restoration we accepted our bid, so we accepted their bid. There you go, Leanna. And they'll be burning the prairie in a couple weeks now. The fire breaks are all installed, so if you see fire in the preserve, don't be alarmed. Everybody will be notified accordingly. We have a burn permit from the town, so no worries, we know what's happening. We caught a badger on the trail cam, which is always super awesome. That's why it's so important to have contiguous habitat. 207 acres preserved is important. Animals need land to live, and they're territorial and they need that space. So having that contiguous habitat, we bring some cool animals, and I don't always like to share that because badgers are, special, and I wouldn't want it to get hurt, but this is the 3rd year in a row that we've seen it, so yay us.
That's awesome. Yeah.
Let's see. Ice off for Lake Ripley was March 14th, 2025. That's 87 days this year, 44 more days than last year. If you think about it, that's crazy. Climate change is a real thing, and it's affecting our lake, and it's important just to track this and to see over the last 80 years what that data looks like. So just wanted to let you guys know. Water quality is going great. Dwight installed all the water loggers except for Park Road because we temporarily misplaced it, but Jeff found it, thanks to Jeff. So he'll be putting it in shortly. Andrew might even put it in next week since Andrew has a little more time since Dwight's still teaching. We've done our first round of Clean Lakes, Citizen Lake Monitoring Network. We try to get onto the lake 2 weeks after ice out to collect data for spring turnover. So that's always an interesting time to collect that data. Weed harvesting is beginning, everything's beginning. I'm coordinating, pulling that out of storage, sending them to their seminar, getting their schedules together, Memorial Day parade set up, launching the shore conveyor and the harvester, all that kind of good stuff. So working through that. And Laura also touched on the Woodcrest Homeowners Association. She gave a great summary, so I won't go too much into that, but I did attend that Board of Adjustment meeting. 17 concerned homeowners showed up. That's huge.
That's
I
amazing.
applaud you. That's great. When important things go on in your community that you don't like, it's important to show up to these local and county meetings and say that. And during their decision, you know, one of the board members said, our task here isn't to listen to the stormwater concerns. It's to understand what the variance is and if there's a hardship, but 17 people showing up and saying that you're concerned, we do take that into consideration. So I think that's a huge win for the town of Oakland residents. I applaud you guys, great job. And so that variance was denied. 2 to 4 homes was my recollection that they could build. 2 to 4.
Yeah, 2 to 4 homes.
Yeah.
On their original plan with the 8 homes, it looked like 2 were outside of, you know, within the 200 feet. So I don't know if they'll keep it that way or
Right,
change
finagle
the
it somehow.
size. We'll see what happens with
Yeah.
that, but I'll keep you posted. But
Yeah, right back at you.
yeah.
Thanks. So yeah, that was a good meeting. I'm glad I went to that. And then Oakland Hills update, we'll discuss it a lot in the upcoming agenda item, so I won't go too much into it, but we're considering a land donation, as you guys are aware, and Deanne is here today to give us a little more information, so
It's-
that's what I got for y'all.
It's
Sorry,
in- it's
long
in-
one, because it's a
yes.
long month.
It's in your report. I just want to comment one thing. Get your turtle signs out. We
Oh,
do have
yeah.
some. We do have some available for purchase because we will start to see our turtles crossing Ripley Road and some of the other near roads, and it just makes me feel horrible when we see them run over. So
Yeah.
try to get them.
I just passed one on.
Did you really?
On 12,
Aw.
a dead one.
A dead one?
Yep.
No.
So try to get those signs out and be aware.
I'll put that on Facebook this week,
And
too.
keep your eyes out for the geese, et cetera, are being like super stupid this year.
Yeah, they are.
And they're just
Yeah.
like out in the road, crossing the
Yeah.
road, you know,
Especially here,
flying at
on A.
windshield level.
Yeah,
Too funny.
yeah. So be cautious. The wildlife's out there having their babies and everything else. So
Yeah, good point. I did rescue my first snake from Ripley Road, so.
Yep.
Jimmy, where else would we find the turtles? Where else could the signs go besides Ripley Road?
They can go out anywhere. I
We
mean,
the district puts them up on County Road A and Ripley Road and a few sites, and then homeowners have them up. I know a few have them by, Georgia, what's that little pond by Koshkonong Trails? Does that have a name, that big pond out there?
Oh, you mean on Rusk Road?
Yeah.
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 There's
Yep.
some on Rucks Road.
Okay, good.
So there's some,
The pond
kind of
on
all
Whit-
over.
by your house further down, the pond by Whispering Pines.
Yes.
They cross there all the time too.
Do you-
So we get some signs
I
out
wish
there.
they
It's
put
good.
them up
Do
on
you-
Punzel too, where the 2 ponds are on both sides of the road.
Do you want me to put
Yeah.
well,
some-
would you guys be okay with me taking
Yeah,
some,
because
and
that's
instead
what
of
these
selling
birds
them,
are
putting out in
crazy.
these hot spots?
Yeah,
Love that
Punzel
for us.
Road would be a good place
Okay, so
to.
Punzel Road and Wolf Road. Is that Wolf?
yes, Wolf Road.
Okay, I will
And
do
if
that.
we need more signs, we need to order them from Doug, right? Is
Yeah.
that how we do? Okay. Doug, you're a man. All right.
The turtle guy.
I don't know how I feel about that.
Any other questions for Leanna? All right. Thanks. Great report, Leanna.
Thanks.
All right. Move on to new business. Land donation. The Preserve at Oakland, formerly Oakland Hills. We're going to have decision and possible action on land donation. Deanna's here today to speak on that. Come on up and give us your talk.
Are you always this chipper or are you a morning person?
We're always a stripper.
It's so nice. I'm
We're
like,
always
I
a
need
stripper.
more coffee.
I would like to say I'm a happy person in general.
She's always like that.
That's nice. All right. Most of you in here have seen other presentations about the subdivision. I recognize most of you. But your board members I don't recognize. So I did hand out some larger copies just so that you know a little bit about the lay of the land. John has owned this land since 1987. He started to kind of kick the tires about possibly developing it in 1999, so a long time ago. The town wasn't ready to entertain anything of that nature at that time. So he continued farming it. It was in farmland preservation for a long time. While it was in farmland preservation, he and his family planted literally hundreds of trees on the land. They were trying to help protect the wetlands and the water runoff from the farming. They also put in quite an extensive tree buffer on 18 and A, and just did everything they could to maintain the land as properly as they could during that time. In 2008, he was working with Ted, the former chair in the town of Oakland, and Ted expressed some interest in going ahead and starting the development process. So at that time, he had a DNR study done, a DOT study done, all kinds of studies done, and started the process of pulling the land out of preservation, and the zoning needed to go into a subdivision. In 2023, he actually was through preliminary plat approval quite a while ago. And at the time, he worked with Cardinal Engineering. There was going to be a significant number of lots more than we have, almost 140, and we now have 100. There was not a market study done as to what was proposed. There was just a lot of sentiment that it would be nice to have multifamily housing, senior housing, et cetera, in the area, which of course I concur with. However, you have to take and weigh that against what the demand is and how that's going to be financed. So when John engaged with myself and my firm, it would have been in June of this past year, we did a market study. We reached out to a number of developers. My career in development started actually in 2004 with Horizon Development, and I called who used to be my intern, he's now the director there, Scott Kwasinski. We talked a lot about, could we pull off a Section 42 senior building in the town of Oakland? What would it look like for us to go through that process? And WIDA is just not funding any projects right now in our area. If you've ever studied that program, it's a wonderful program. But we just don't have the infrastructure. We're not large enough quite yet. Will we get there? Probably. So one of the things that I wanted to do with John is really look at how we responsibly manage the land. And at one time, it was just one phase. And so in watching what happened in the vineyards in our area and just seeing all of that land sit for a really long time, and as a builder myself, then watching all of the truss dumps on the lots and watching house after house go up, and then all of the lawsuits that ensued with the water management in the basements, it was just irresponsible management of the land. And that's one of the things we wanted to make sure we did, is phase it in such a way that regardless of what happens in the economy, we can sell one phase at a time, continue to responsibly farm phase 2 and phase 3 until we sell 70-ish% of phase 1 and then start the infrastructure for phase 2 and phase 3. So right now, the marketing projects that we will be selling each phase in approximately 2 to 3 years. The goal being 2 to 3 years. But with land donation, we need to make sure that John has the opportunity to donate a parcel with each phase. And so on the outside chance that the economy and rates continue to rise and things slow in the housing market, which I don't really see happening on the construction side of things, but it can. So there's things always out of our control. So that's why this plat was phased in 3 donation phases. So if you take a look at the map I gave you, Outlot 2 is what we would be donating with phase 1. And so that's the one at the bottom here, and it's about 8 acres.
So it's the 3 here, so it's the the odd-shaped
this
one and the
is-
two below it.
This is
And the
phase
bottom
one.
one is
Okay.
the first phase donation, correct?
Correct.
Everybody sees that.
And the
This-
green is
with
phase
that.
1 of the actual development for the property.
It's a better view.
That's a better view.
So a few things have happened. Leanna and John kind of kicked around some street names. I think you proposed Blue Violet and Copper Iris.
I didn't, I don't
No?
think so.
Oh, okay. He said he talked to you about some names and just really wanted to stick with anything that was plant-based and natives and in the area. So we hired a gentleman, his name is Paul Skidmore, and he's a landscape architect that's worked with Jeff Rosenberg. If any of you know how Viridian Homes came to be, it was Don Simonson Homes and Jeff Rosenberg at Midland came together years ago and formed Viridian. So Paul's been around a really long time, and we're working together to try to make sure that we have wetland-upland transition for the right types of plantings to protect the wetland further. So he suggested things like red and yellow twig dogwood, speckled alder, all kinds of little blue stem, prairie drop seed, coneflower. It's just a small sampling, but of things. And he does want to have some tamaracks as well that he puts through that area. So John is 100% on board with anything and everything we can do to speak to the actual name of the subdivision, the Preserve at Oakland, looking and feeling like it has been there for a long time. We plan on doing the prairie around the entire perimeter of the subdivision with Paul's help, so that by phase 2, we should actually have some really pretty established prairie plantings in and amongst the tree lines. All of the ponds that he'll be doing, same thing. He's planning on making sure that the ponds are lined with natives, lined with things that help with rain management and storm management, and of course, the roots not too deep that they damage any of that. So we're really happy to have him on our team with expertise to just make sure we're doing what we can. So the donation process, our attorney has worked with your attorney, and yes, my understanding is, I heard some chatter on finance, and yes, it's the same process with the town. A lot of times, developers are looking for things, and they generally end up paying the legal fees for any of this type of stuff. So from what I understand, there was an agreement. It has been reviewed and approved by Adam and by Paul, which is Mr. Didion's attorney. And from what I understand, basically the only thing left for us to do is request if you would like to accept this land, let you ask any questions you may have, and then we have an appraiser that we have scheduled, but they are about 2 months out right now. So we'll have him probably in June finish up the appraisal of the land.
Do you know the, excuse me, the amount of acreage per the 3 sections? Could you just give those to us, like,
It's
start with
8.174 is the first one.
8 point what?
174 is the first one, and actually, I'm going to give this to you. This would be the final plat donation with that actual parcel. So you have a clean copy of that. The overall donation would be about 22 acres. Outlot 5, whew, tiny letters, 9.834. And outlot 7, which is the final phase 3, 4.249.
Is there an access to these points?
There is, yes.
Yeah, that was all part of our negotiations through the process. So we had, since the original ask of the donation, we went back and forth several times with, we needed access to the subdivision, obviously, or an easement, so we could access our lands, or anybody else could access also. So we were able to gain that access on the plot. And then there were several restrictions that we went back and forth on, one of them being the no hunting, so we could understand what that meant and how the district would play a role in that, and those are listed here. So that's some of the things that we were able to negotiate through this process. And the signage for the no hunting, something the district would not have to pay for. That signage would be put up, for those guys, so we didn't have to pay for it. So there were several restrictions that are listed here that we agreed to. But a total acreage of 22 point what?
I wish I knew that number, I do not.
We'd have to add those three together. then.
Yeah, I'll have to add it for you.
I just want to read the restrictions to the board so they know what was agreed to by our legal counsel and your legal counsel. So on page 2 of your document, it lists the restrictions A, B, and C. A being during the restricted period as defined in section 6B below, the donation property shall only be used for wetlands and natural area. B, there shall be no hunting on the donated property. Donor acknowledges that the recipient shall have no independent duty or obligation to actively prevent or enforce this prohibition beyond permitting, if requested donor to place signs on donor's expense. And then C, the deed shall be contained in the restriction against the sale of the donation property for a period of 36 months or from the closing date. Those are the restrictions that we were working with their group on.
So my question is, those restrictions apply to the first donation, but not the second two? Because each time you'll come forward, like, to make a donation as you develop each one. So this only applies to this 8.174.
It does for now, but I would assume that the attorneys are going to have a very similar, almost identical
Okay.
going through. One of the things John wanted to express too is that even though we're donating it in phases, the understanding is that if you say yes to phase 1, we're wanting you to have all of it. And so just like in general real estate, you know, if I were to sell someone a home and they need to occupy it early, I have an addenda O, which allows, you know, rental and short-term negotiations between people. And if you wanted to do a burn, for example, of the entire area, he's completely fine with that. And anything that we can be doing collectively to try to help get it ready, because I understand when you're working with mitigating invasive species, it doesn't make sense to do one tiny chunk and not be thinking through the whole parcel. So we hope to be coming back to you, Deb, in like 2 years, not in 5, you know, for this next one and the
Right.
next.
I just wanted to understand, because it's in phases, you know, like what would happen to the other 2 parcels, you know,
Right.
during this time.
Well, and to one of the things, just so everyone understands the phasing, we're recording the entire preliminary plat. So all of that will be recorded with the county,
Okay.
but the final plat recording happens with each phase. The reason for that is if something were to materially change in the area, and all of a sudden Jefferson County becomes a hot topic with WIDA or something, or we work with the town board and we work on zoning. Right now, 80 by 80, 4-unit max. Like, that's what we have to work with. So if we work to kind of tweak some of the zoning and we change anything in the future, the wetland part wouldn't change. It would just be what happens with the individual phase
Okay.
2 and phase 3.
And I realize that's your intention, to donate all 3 as the phases go. Is that something the board wants more of an assurance of in the motion? That upon accepting the first one, that there's an agreement that we would be offered the next 2? Or do you want to take it individually by each time?
Well,
I get
one
some-
question I have is one of the things that you're talking about is the changes, you know, down the line, and that's why it's going in phases. Am I correct that, you know, the donation going with the phases kind of has something to do with the tax burden and all that other kind of stuff of the development? What if that equation changes? I know that there has been, going through a lot of the NGO community right now, the potential that tax exempt status, et cetera, is under review by the administration. Would that change anything?
Not to our, like, it's not our intention in any way, shape, or form. Mr. Didion's not, it's phased this way because the tax donation limitations are every 5 years. So that is indeed why it's phased. However, he's not looking for tax exempt status. Oakland Hills LLC is a
Well, no, I
regular.
meant along the lines of if you're going to donate to a tax exempt
Oh,
organization,
got it.
then you get to claim that in your taxation balance sheet. And so if there was a change in the tax code of some sort, that was what I was kind of getting
And
at.
we have other opportunities for donation, so we only have to meet a 5% of the land being donated to any public entity for the development. So, you know, he could decide he was going to donate the wetlands in the northwest wet pond and, you know, that other outlet and stuff to another organization if that became an issue. I think having the contingency, Jimmy, of all phases being donated, regardless of taxation potential changes or anything of that, would be something he'd be open to. Because we could absolutely give other portions of the land if we had to.
Will you be advising potential buyers that this property, if the 22 acres is indeed donated, that it's the Lake District and they have an easement? I'm looking, a specific example would be, we had a cost share and we did a burn. The homeowner objected to the burn, even though we had the right to do that. I think it would be important to let at least the homeowners that are adjacent to the properties be aware that it would be owned by the district, and on occasion there could be a burn, there could be you know, groups of people out there. So it's understood from the very beginning of purchasing the property that this is part of the deal. You see what I'm saying?
I do.
So
That's something I would say we could add to our covenants and restrictions.
I think it would be in at least let the buyers be fully informed. I think most people are going to would look at it as a good thing, but just in past experiences, we have run into some issues.
Yeah.
Or if they're curious, why is there a classroom of kids out there
Right.
taking seats or
Right.
something like
Exactly.
that, you know?
Yeah, we see it as personally, you know, looking at it as an opportunity for nature connection with those that live in the community. Whether they like it or not, they're going to have prairie plants in their backyard, you know, so we're hoping that it's just something that's part of the draw to the community, is the education piece, the paths and everything across the street from Lake Ripley Management District, and, you know, preservation of the area.
The roundup battle begins.
Oh.
The true green folks out there.
Well, I've been working on how restrictive can I get in my plantings list with the CCRs to prevent plants that we don't want to see. So, yeah.
So, any other questions for Deanne or us on the land donation?
I have a question.
Yeah.
Any chance that you might consider going back to the Oakland Hills name instead of this name?
I highly doubt it at this point.
Because I think a lot of people here think of the preserve as this out here. And so I think that it'll create a certain kind of confusion.
Sure.
And that name change just came recently, so that's a new thing that came to the planning committee. It wasn't originally planned. We found out about it shortly after, and that was one of our concerns is in our negotiating. Is it's a very similar name to our preserve, and people might get confused. So we're going to have to do our best to educate.
Well, we could even think about how we signage and how we promote, you know, saying subdivision or community or something of that nature that delineates between the two, if that's helpful. I know the attorneys did pretty extensive searches to make sure that we weren't actually infringing upon any other names that were out there. But I do understand that how things are referred to in areas get tricky. So yeah, whether it be community or subdivision, something of that nature added to marketing materials, et cetera, to help with that, we would be open to doing that. Thank you for bringing that up.
Yeah, that was one of our first concerns that we saw when that came up. Any other concerns, questions, or anybody want to make a motion?
To accept the donation?
Yeah, we would have to accept the donation of the lot, what is it, 5 you said? Lot 2?
Lot 2?
Lot 2, with the understanding that we were going to have the donation made with the other 2 lots. I mean, I think that's a pretty
Contingency, yeah.
contingency on that, because I think it'd be pretty important if they
Yes.
said we weren't going to give you the other 2 at some later point, then we're kind of trapped with the one, right?
I'll make a motion that we accept the donation from Didion for lot number 2 with the contingent that the other 2 lots follow the same form and fashion of donation.
Okay, there's a motion on the floor, is there a second? Okay, Meg second. Is there any other discussion on the motion of the donation?
It should list outlot 2, not lot 2.
Outlot, yeah,
Thank you.
outlot 2. Any other discussion? Okay, seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Nays? All right, motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for coming. Thank you for the great donation.
Excited to actually see the kids out there doing some of those projects. Thank you.
Okay, let's move on to the per diem expense. Leanna went to the conference and had some expenses, so we just want to make sure she gets reimbursed properly. This is the first time we've done this since we passed the per diem policy, so we just want to make sure we're doing it the way we should be. That's why it's on the agenda. Otherwise, I would just sign it. So let's have some discussion on how we're going to move forward with this. So there were obviously 2 receipts that you had saved. You were
These are
gone
receipts
for
the thing, right?
1 overnight or 2 overnights? 2 overnights. So
3 days,
travel,
2 nights.
what's that?
3 days, 2 nights.
3 days and 2 nights. So with the per diem policy provided, is it my understanding that she should receive the per diem rate per day of the $59, and then on the travel day is $44? Is that how we agreed to do it with the per diem? Or do we agree to, I'm just looking at the schedule here, the per diem schedule.
So if you're using the per diem schedule for state of Wisconsin, the way it's treated is on a travel day, you do not, you get, overnight goes on 1 day.
Yep.
And on a travel day, those are shoulder days. Those shoulder days, you don't get the full amount. It's assumed that one of
75%.
your meals has already been, is taken at home. So they do have the lower amount on those shoulder days. So if you're gone for like 3 days, your middle day is the full.
Correct.
And then on either side, it's the smaller
The
amount.
75%.
Yep.
Which is the last column here at the 44.25, if we're using the Wisconsin Dells Columbia. So you see it on the sheet here, where I believe this column here would be the 75 percentile. And I believe the normal percentile would be the $59. So,
I remember some discussion about, rather than making rates, that it be
Actual and reasonable.
actual, and that's how I read that paragraph.
Because
And
the
that's
other
why
way that you
she's-
can do it is where, but then that really sticks her with these higher cost meals, because I don't think they've adjusted for the fact that prices have gone up so much on food. They only raised the per diem rate at the state by like $1 in 2023.
Of course.
And it was something like $9 or $8 for breakfast, which is almost impossible to get. I think it was $12 for lunch and something like $20 for dinner. So when you look at those kinds of rates, I think they still add up to that $59 or whatever a day, but it ended up being almost impossible to actually eat on those rates.
Right.
If you're going to have a drink along with your meal,
So-
you know, or something,
so
when they're
just for
charging
cost-
$3 for a water.
just for cost, if we use the 1 full day and the 2 partial days with the Wisconsin Dells Columbia amount of $59 for the total day and the 3/4 at $44.25, the total reimbursement for Lana would be $147.50.
But she's only submitted receipts for the $53.68.
Well, that's the difference.
So-
Do we pay per diem or do we pay receipts?
Well, why else would you be having receipts attached?
A lot of times, it's, people ask you to
When
bring
I used to get a per diem, they gave us the money before we went, and we didn't provide any,
Right.
that was our money to spend.
We could do that. too.
But for us having, but when it says in here, receipts must be submitted for all expenses, why would you do that then? If you're going to go by that rate, like, to me, you're talking about 2 different things, and that's, I thought the idea was, at the discussion, that we would reimburse her for the receipts submitted for her meals.
Yeah,
Did
that's
I
what-
understand that right at
That's
the
what
time?
that's what I recall as well, right?
Because I think you brought it up because of
Right.
some of the work that you've done in the past.
And you're
So-
right, if it's per diem, you don't need receipts, you just get the flat money and you do with it what you want to do. If you don't want to eat, don't
Right.
eat, stay in a cot, it doesn't matter. That's the point of turning a receipts is that you get paid for what you spent.
Correct. So I guess the question is, let's clarify what we're doing and then let's do it. So do we just want to pay for the receipts and it's not a per diem then?
Yeah, I thought we wanted to go with actual and reasonable for, not necessarily for this topic, if it was actually more or less, but if it was more, we had the ability to pay what the actual expense was, rather than having it come out of her pocket if it was actually more than what the per diem covered. That's why we wanted to go to A&R, which actual and reasonable.
Right. So we want to just approve just the receipts. Okay. Let's do that. And then the receipts were here. Where's
They're on the back.
receipts? On the back of this one. Back of this one.
And just so you know, one of the things that, when it comes to that reimbursement, they generally don't allow you to get reimbursement for sales tax. So I don't know if that works
Is
in this
sales tax
case,
in there?
if you're working for government at least. Because sales tax on the food is supposed to be exemptions. You can't really do that at a restaurant.
No.
So I don't know if that's quibbled at any point.
Well, the
At
point is.
least when I
she-
worked for the state, they would say, I'm sorry, we're not reimbursing you for the
well,
state
and
sales
that might
tax.
be a good question, but she paid the amount, so we have to
Yeah.
reimburse her.
Right.
Yes.
Yes.
All right, so we need a motion to approve the 5368 of receipts for Leanna Strip.
Do we need a motion? It says submit to chairman for processing. You're asking for a motion
I am,
for it?
because this is
Just so going forward, you know what to do?
This is going to set precedent on how we do it moving
Okay.
forward, so we all understand as a board how we want to do this.
Okay.
Okay. I'll make a motion to approve the reimbursement of the $53.68 as shown on the employee reimbursement form.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, all in favor signify, is there any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Nays? Okay, motion passes. All right, old business, 2026 budget request and discussion and possible action. Well, more discussion than anything, but we like to put this on there a couple months in advance before our budget meeting to see if there's any areas of the budget that we want to look at. I think it might be clear that we maybe want to put, and I'm going to request that we put a few more thousand into the legal budget. It always seems like that's a good spot to have some extra money. I don't know if it's extra, but when things do come up, like we're hearing in the meeting, and we have to have lawyers work on these kind of legal agreements, that's not something me and Leanna are going to feel comfortable doing, so we reach out to Adam. And then when there's possible land acquisitions that are happening, we certainly need that help, so I will request to put some extra money in there. Are there any other areas that we see in the budget that,
I was wondering whether or not you need to think a little bit more about the real costs going up for, like, if you, unfortunately, for example, my son just called and they doubled the price on what he has to have done for car repair based on parts, because parts are coming from overseas.
that's true?
And so that ball joint just jumped like, $500,
Right.
So we might want to have a cushion in there for those kinds of contingencies. Since the truck ended up costing a little bit, I think, this year, that was unexpected. And so those repairs might be something that we want to keep in mind. Also, if the Stantec type work, if any of those kinds of testing, et cetera, if any of that's using materials that is not sourced from the US from the beginning, those prices will go up.
Yeah. So when we have our budget, when we have our meeting, the committee meets, we'll look at line item by line item, and we'll make adjustments with those assumptions, small adjustments, probably in a lot of those lines. So we'll look at that when we do it, and then, of course, we bring it back to the board for approval. So we'll do that.
You're going to consider upping postage, because the post office has once again submitted their every 6-month increase for postage.
Okay.
I have every reason to believe they're going to going to get it because they always do. It's going to be at least 5%.
Okay.
So,
Buy your forever stamps.
Yeah, and
I mean, depending on what's going on in the office level or what's happening here, I'm the one using most of the stamps to pay bills, to send payroll checks. Some of these things we've been able to change over to being online payments.
I'm speaking more of any
Ripples.
of the mailings, the ripples, the annual report stuff that we've got to. So if it goes through, it'll be effective mid-July. So we might want to consider, when we're going to mail the ripples for the annual report, just to get under that, to save.
yeah, there's deadlines that we have to follow. on that,
Well, we
so-
budgeted $5,000, which we've never spent
Okay.
because you've been able to donate.
Right, for the printing, then, and
Yes,
that
and so
should
we
continue
keep
through the
we
year.
keep it up there because
Sure. And we should be fine just leaving it, because I think the last time we did the ripples was.
well, it was 1429. Is that right? Let's see. No, wrong place. 1807.
For the ripples? That would.
Oh no, part of that included the web. That's the website stuff. I have that
Yeah,
in
I
there,
think
too.
it's about $600 an issue now, I
Right.
mean, I'm guessing.
But I think there were two things in there. Part of that was
We'll-
what we paid town web, and then part of it
Gotcha.
was, and the town web was over $1,000.
Yep, that
So,
seems about right.
When we look
So-
at it, we'll look at postage, all those things that we're expecting to go up, we'll put a little in there for that. We'll look at all that. Thanks for bringing that up, Meg, too. So there's gonna
Well,
be
it was a little bit unpleasant hearing the numbers that he was giving me.
And that's everywhere. It's not just
Yeah,
going to be us, it's going to be everywhere, so. Okay, if there's anything else you think of, please send us an email and let us know, because we'll probably start those meetings pretty soon. Okay, any other discussion on budget? Okay, seeing none, any announcements today? Any other announcements? Okay, seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All right, is there a second?
Second.
You gotta
Meg
be
seconded. All in
quicker.
favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Doug, we got you out of here in 5 minutes to spare.